Yeah, I couldn't be asked to wait until we got to 10 minutes. So I thought I was going to come live now. Hopefully, I am talking. Hopefully, everybody can hear me. If you can just let me know that you can in the chat, I'll be most appreciative before I start spilling my guts out to everybody and not actually knowing if anybody can hear me. So, yeah, I'm actually really happy, Miss Murder, that you're going to go see your man. Thanks for letting us know. Thank you very much, Lonely Wolf. Thank you very much, Quinn, for answering my plea for if people can hear me or not. I thought I'd do a little bit of housekeeping very quickly before I go forth. I just wanted to let people know that I've been doing a lot of work with college recently, doing computers and things like that. And I've been focusing more on being able to get my college work done more than I have done doing this. Though I have come to some sort of a, should I say, arrangement with myself. Because, I have to be diplomatic all the time and it has to be with myself, be, dictatorial with myself and tell myself what to do. I have to discuss these things. But yeah, I'll come to you where I'm probably going to do a live stream about certain topics or a group of topics on a Saturday and just try and have a discussion with people and try and do some stories and so on. If you're wondering why I keep on looking up rather than to the camera, it's because the camera's down there rather than where it would normally be. So that's the reason why the eyes keep on changing. Before I actually get into the actual story itself, I would just like to preface this whole story and this whole discussion with this isn't a man versus woman issue in my eyes. This isn't a men's rights versus feminist rights. This isn't a case of that for me. I really want to try and look at this case as objectively as possible and try and being able to work out what's the best course of action, what the solutions there are, and what we can do in the future, maybe. Now, I know that sounds a little bit weird with YouTube that only has 1,000 subs and probably only about 4 or 6 people watching at the minute. But I thought it'd be really interesting to be able to have that conversation with you guys. And maybe there's enough people that will watch it later on that maybe we'll share it. Maybe there's something that we can do. Maybe. Or maybe it's just like anything else. You just shout it into the void and having a discussion. But I think it's something interesting that we actually really need to talk about. Good to see you, Doku. Good to see everybody in the chat as well, all the old regulars. So it's nice to see you all. To see you nice. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight into the story. And last night there was a development in this story as well, and I wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was going on. So this will be interesting because I did not sort this out anyway. Yeah. This did not go well. This did not go well at all. Let me do something else because this is not going the way I wanted it to go. Not going well at all. That's the one I wanted. There is no audio. You can tell that I've done this for a long time now. I've done really well, really well. I am trying to talk as quickly as possible, Miss Murder. I am trying to talk as quickly as possible. Anybody that wants to like the stream, But yeah, there has been a development in the Sir Everard case, and that is that the body that was found 2 or 3 days ago has now been confirmed as being the body of Sarah Everard. For anybody that's been following this story, I think most people would realize that this is probably a foregone conclusion. Most people kind of already knew that it was her body, but yeah, it's been confirmed that her body has been found, and yeah, I find this story very. It really pisses me off. Let me put it that way. It really pisses me off because in this tragic event that's happened, from this poor lass that's gone missing and has been murdered. It seems like there's so many political groups out there now that are using this as a bandwagon to be able to push their own narratives, to be able to say, oh, it's all men's fault, or it's all this person's fault. And people are counteracting those talking points, those political points, rather than actually dealing with what the problem is and what the issue was, where it was a case of somebody, unfortunately, I say somebody, I know who did that, and we'll get into who actually did it later on. It was a police officer, believe it or not, and was able to take her and kill her, and I'm sure that he's done other things to her as well, but that's just conjecture. I just find that this story is very, as I said, it really pisses me off. Rather than trying to be erudite about it, it really pisses me the fuck off, because there's something that we should really be focusing on, and that is the element of crime. That is the element of being able to talk about how both men and women feel scared in certain areas and scared at certain times and scared at walking in different twilights or early mornings and so on and so forth. But now it's been hijacked by both sides of the political aisle, not just feminists, not just anybody. Everybody has seemed to have hijacked this as a political talking point, rather than it just being about, well, this poor lady has been murdered and just left on the middle of the common. And nobody wants to really talk about the actual issues, about how what's happened. Is it a case of there's not enough cameras in certain areas, and so on and so forth? So I wanted to try and get to, I mean, it's not very often this murder. It's not very often that it's a killer cop. But I do get your point that I'm not really that shocked either, to be honest with you. But let me just go through the actual story. The reason why I try and pause is I want to collect myself with certain parts of this story, because certain aspects of this are going to kind of annoy me. And I've been known before for going off on one. No, I'm kind of happy just doing this by myself, to be honest with you. Just for today. I've just got a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, but I just kind of want to ease people into it rather than it being a case of like I would normally do. I want to try and let's say make it a bit more structured than what I would normally do. Let's just say that, a bit more structured than what I would normally do. So I appreciate you wanting to come in, Miss Murder, but I'm just going to try and do this myself. So I'm going to start off from the beginning of the story and see what we can do. So there is a Met officer, as I said, that has been held over the missing woman that's been taken to hospital. This isn't the beginning of the story, obviously. This isn't the beginning of the story at all. Unfortunately, in the... let me find the actual right story, actually, to be fair. Because I don't think that I'm actually doing this at the right... No, I'm going to start from the beginning. A Met officer was arrested after the disappearance of Sarah Everard. Was taken to hospital with a head injury after he suffered while in custody. The reason why I'm going through this is because it will go through what has actually happened as well. But I want to go through the whole thing and let everybody know what's been going on. So the officer is being questioned on suspicion of murder and kidnap after human remains were found in the search for Miss Everard. Now, I've already shown the story at the beginning that has proven that these human remains are that of Sarah Everard. So the officer that's being held in suspicion of this, I believe it's actually called Mr. Cousins. Yeah, Wayne Cousins. He's actually been held, but has actually had allegations against him as well. Allegations of sexual misconduct. In actual fact, the earliest or the last, should we say, oh, my brain's gone. allegations. The last allegations that were alleged against this man were 3 days before this murder was committed. So this suspect, Wayne Couzens, has been held in custody and has been hurt somehow. I'm not sure if it would have been by people that were in the cell with him, or if it was a case of a police officer getting some comeuppance for it. So Miss Everard, 33, was last seen on the 3rd of March in Clapham, South London, on her way home from a friend's house. So the human remains were discovered in woodland near Ashford, Kent, so taken quite a bit of a distance away as well. On Wednesday, but detectives have not yet been able to confirm their identity. As said, the story that came out today, or last night, has actually confirmed that these are Sarah Everard's remains, unfortunately. So tributes are being laid for the members of the public to sit where police are continuing to carrying out the path of their investigation, which is always a good idea. That what we're going to do is we're going to put these flowers and plants down where we're investigating, or at least alongside where we're investigating. Always a good idea, but I understand why people would want to do that, to show the respect, to show that they are feeling the loss of somebody in their community. So I understand it, but always helps, right? Let's just add more crap to the actual site that we're trying to investigate. Always a good idea. So already you can see that there's been quite a lot of problems. So you've got this female that has been found, or remains of that have been found on Ashford, and let's just say that it goes a little bit over the top over there. A lot of people are, let's just say on Twitter, for instance, that you have so many people that are doing the hashtag curfew for men. And I really want to get on to that. I really do. I really want to get on to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop talking about the idea of it, and I'm going to actually go through this, because I think it's actually really interesting. Or no, I'll tell you what I will do. What I will do is I'm going to go through some of the stories that some of the women have put forward, that are going forward. And I want to try and talk about that and see how the differences are. So I want to go through that first, and I'm going to talk about the idea of the men curfew. So I will get there. So if anybody wants to wait until that, then by all means, please do. But I want to actually go through this step by step and try and get an idea of why something is being pushed forward, rather than just shooting it down or just going over the top of anything. So I am going to get there. I'm just trying to slow myself down, because I have a tendency, as somebody's already said before, of going over the top and talking too quickly. So let me share a BBC story about Sir Everard. Hello, it's good to see you, buddy. It's good to see you. Let me go through the story of Sir Everard and the women that are showing their fear of walking alone. So let me go through that, and I will share the audio, because I think there's a couple of little videos that are on there as well that will be interesting for us to watch. So obviously you have these 3 commentators that have actually put forward their own stories. There has also been lots of other stories that have gone forth on the internet, on the old Twitter sphere as well. So I wanted to read the story and see what some of the fears are that women have, and see if there's a correlation between how I, as a 6'3", around about 18 stone, a little bit more, a little bit less, blah, 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 gets as well when I walk around on my own. So I want to see if there's a correlation and there is substance to being able to have a discourse, to being able to work out, is it just because of men that you get these fears, or is it because of the situation? And I just want to try and work out what we can do about it, rather than just blaming a whole demographic. Maybe there's more of, should we say, instances in which we have more in common than we do that are apart. And maybe we might actually learn there are certain things that men just do not experience that women do. So without further ado, let's go and talk about this story. So, one of the main reasons why the Sarah Everard story has come forward is because of this point, right? So, women will be worried and may well be feeling scared after the disappearance of Sarah Everard, the head of the Metropolitan Police, Carissa Dick, said. On social media, in WhatsApp groups, and in Zoom calls across the country, women have been talking about the case of the 33-year-old who went missing in Clapham, South London on the 3rd of March. The Met police officer continues to be questioned on suspicion of her murder, which we now know it's Mr. Cousins, and I wanted to try and get on to the actual bit where they're trying to talk. So a couple of people have been doing these quotes, and I just want to try and understand them myself before I start critiquing them or seeing if there's parallels or seeing if there's differences that we have. So Grace Jessup tells Radio 1 Newsbeat, I learned from a very young age that I would have to change my behavior in order to keep myself safe. I know that she's mainly talking about the idea of how women will have to dress differently or act differently. But I think men have to go through this issue as well, where we have to change our behavior in order to keep safe as well. It's not just a woman thing. It's also a man thing that we have to make sure that we're aware of our surroundings, making sure that we're polite to people or making sure we don't put ourselves in stupid positions. I don't think that that's primarily just a woman issue. I think it's more of a universal issue. And I think understanding your personal area and your personal safety is one of the most important things that you can do as an adult or a young adult. And I think the quicker that you learn that the world is not a safe place and never will be, is something that we should all as adults actually accept. That doesn't mean, by the way, that the people that commit these crimes against people get a free pass. It's also to say that be aware of your surroundings. That's not to put victim blaming onto anybody and say, oh, well, you're the problem, you're the issue, you put yourself in that position. No, it's to say that, yeah, these people exist that will do these types of harms to you. But maybe it's also an idea not to put yourself in those types of positions. Now, sometimes you just can't help it. And I completely and utterly agree that, yes, sometimes you do have to go underneath a bridge or you do have to go into the town at night and so on and so forth. And I get it. From when you have to do those things, it's goddamn scary when you have to go through a group of 20 or 30 kids or even a group of 10 kids in the middle of a park. I understand that. And by the way, when I mean kids, I mean like 14 to 18-year-olds or 22-year-olds. I get that that can be scary. Just a sheer amount of numbers, just what they're wearing, just a understanding of the prejudice that comes along with groups that are hanging around. I get that. But men also have that problem. And without going into stats and statistics, men also have more of a chance of being violently assaulted by other people, other men primarily. So to say that, oh, you needed to change your behavior as a woman to keep yourself safe is uniquely inherent to women, I don't agree with you. Yeah, there are different challenges that women have to face, and I completely and utterly agree with you. Catcalling, whistling, men just keep on chasing you when you've already said no or not said anything and you don't want to engage. I understand that there are differences. I do get that. But before we start talking about the differences, shouldn't we actually agree on the similarities? And that way, when we see the similarities and we can get rid of the prejudice that comes between looking at one demographic compared to another demographic, we can conglomerate them two together. Maybe we've got a higher chance of being able to sort this problem out. If there's problems with people that are feeling scared in the middle of the park with 10, 20 kids that are walking around, so to speak, maybe there's a discussion between men and women and government that can actually go forward with that and try and work out what the best way, increasing police presences, for instance, in those types of areas. Though I will say that that may not be the best idea considering the Sarah Everard story, but let's carry on. So we're seeing a lot of women coming out and saying, we're tired of this, we're sick of this. We're also kind of sick of the fact that this is a shock to men. This has been my reality since I was about a 14-year-old walking down the road in school uniform and being harassed by passers-by. See, I think this is where we actually have a breakdown in understanding between some groups of men and people that are reading this story. See, the first part is that as I just did, you would break it down into an own personal understanding of what your situation is or their situation is. So you're always trying to put yourself in their position. But being a man, and I mean this wholeheartedly, and maybe there are some absolute beauties of a man that are out there that actually this happens to, but personally I haven't experienced this, so I'll just go on with my own experience. And that is, I've never been harassed by women going, I want your number, and giving me whistles and things like that. Now, that's not to say, oh, that's the most scariest thing in the world. But if you're on your own at 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, or 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and you're trying to get on a bus and you're on your own, I can understand how intimidating that is. To have 2 or 3 groups of men or boys coming up to you and trying to get your number, touching you on the shoulder, complimenting you when you don't want the compliments, and trying to be overly assertive and trying to get into you, so to speak. And yes, I use that on purpose. I think that men normally miss that. They don't miss how important and how scary that can be for women at that time of the day. I think we miss that as a society, especially, as I said, with certain groups of men. We personalize these types of issues and go, oh, yeah, well, that's nothing. If you have a problem with a group of 4 or 5 kids that are in the corner and you're just walking past and you get a little bit scared when you're walking past, wondering if something's going to happen, how do you feel if you are now smaller, weaker in most aspects, with those groups of lads that are now actually coming up to you and circling you and trying to get you to do stuff with them? Can you imagine the difference in intimidation levels? That just walking past them and them actually walking after you and trying to corner you and talk to you, so to speak, to get your number or whatever. Can you imagine the difference in the interpretation there? Because I can, but as a man, I find it hard to empathize. I can sympathize, but I can't really fully empathize with that because I've never had that really happen to me. And maybe that's a good thing. I'm just going to check the chat and see what the chat's actually saying about that. Does anybody actually have any references on that one? Do they think that I'm talking out my arse, so to speak, on that? Or do you think I've actually made a point or anything? See, I completely understand what Miss Murder's saying here. And yes, we have checked. She is a girl. So she has every right to be able to talk about this on this subject. But she says that it's horribly sorry, I'm horribly biased in this situation. I hate the whole women are sick of argument because to me it sounds like they want to be seen as victims and be coddled, which I can't stand. Now, I do actually completely and utterly understand everything that she's saying there. I really do actually understand it. For me, though, I would say that I don't think it's a case of them actually wanting to be any sort of victim or anything else like that. I think it more comes to a point of going, well, we've dealt with this problem in such a long time, and it feels like it's only a us problem rather than it being a them problem. And I think there are nuances into how we as men look at these situations and go, well, no, we just think that they're being victims. Yeah, there's always problems where women can come out and tell people to fuck off and things like that. And I get that. Maybe they should be a bit more forceful in telling people to, do one. And maybe that's an argument. But also as well, just to completely, and I'm not saying Miss Murder was doing this, but to completely dismiss the idea of, well, I feel intimidated and scared when these things happen, to just dismiss that seems, I don't know. In the society, maybe it should be a case of we do look at things a little bit more anecdotally as well, because sometimes we can't always have statistics for everything. Like, can we determine how many catcalls turn into the idea of rape, for instance? I don't think that we can. I don't think that that's something that can be instantified either. I don't think that's something that you can prove. But anecdotally, can you work out that when people are starting to talk, like coming over, like boys coming over and talking to girls, how things can change and escalate into that sort of situation? I think that you can probably draw conclusions from that. I do think that there is more of a nuance that needs to be talked about these types of issues, more than it being just a case of what most, and I see this from mostly men's side, obviously, just going, oh, you just need to man up and you just need to deal with it, so to speak. I do think that it comes, for me, more of a case of, I don't think that we empathize with women and how that they actually deal with the problems that are at hand. I do think that it comes to a case of, to be fair, when people say catcalling, they don't just mean whistling and things like that. They also mean the "hello, darling, come over here" type thing, and when it continues and so on and so forth. Catcalling isn't just whistling, so to speak. But again, I'm not trying to dilute what the problem or issue is here. I'm just trying to put forward the idea of, if we are going to talk about issues, it can't be issues that are just dealt with by one side. And I think that this is true for men's issues, and I think this is true for women's issues. These are not just completely separate entities. It's a societal issue. So as a society, shouldn't we come together to, one, understand the opposite demographics plight, so to speak, emphasize and actually understand what's going on so we can have empathy towards them rather than just them trying to emphasize it to us. I just think that with the way that politics is going at the minute, people are so polarized. Even when we're talking about this now, it comes to a point of sides rather than it coming to a point of, let's come together to actually tackle these types of issues. Because the issue isn't necessarily, well, all men do the catcalling or all men are the ones that are doing all of these problems. No, it comes to the groups of people that are bored on the streets, that are wasting their time doing whatever. And I just think that it's interesting that men don't really listen to women and women don't really listen to men on the issues that they actually have. I think this Sarah Everard story completely highlights that, where unfortunately the feminists of groups have hijacked the story to make it this is a story purely about women and things like that, which obviously it is. It's got Sarah Everard and everything else like that in it. I understand that, but the story is now being publicized as a feminist movement story rather than it being a criminal justice story and something that we can come together and talk about as a whole society. And it's actually really interesting on that aspect that it separates so much. I'm going to carry on reading the story and see if there's anything else that's there. But I really enjoyed the chat's movement. I think you're actually correct on that one, Unity Colin. I actually do think it's another divide and conquer, rather than it actually being something that can be talked about, understood, and actually addressed. It now comes to a point of men versus women again, and this should never be a story about men versus women. This should be a story about, well, you have your problems, we have our problems. They seem similar in most aspects, though there are differences and nuances in that. Maybe we should come together and actually sort this out as a society. No, what we're going to do instead is we're going to put men against women and women against men for whatever goddamn reason, because somehow that makes more sense, apparently. So let me carry on with the actual story and read that a little bit more. So Grace says that she never goes out without telling a friend to text her when they get home or vice versa. Now, I can't speak for all men on this aspect, but if I'm going out on a night out with my mates or something like that, I'm always texting the missus to let her know that what was going on. When I was younger, it'd always be my mum or my dad. If I was with mates that I knew that I could trust, so to speak, and I knew that they were home or whatever, I would text them and let them know that I was getting home. Now, that's not necessarily a product of all men, though, because I know that most men don't think about that. But to say that, oh, you go home and you want to make sure that you let people know is inherently just a woman thing, I don't think is entirely true, because I do think that there are women that don't text their people to let them know that they're safe either. My partner doesn't do that very often, to be honest with you. She just gets on, gets done. But that, again, doesn't mean that it's inherently a women's issue, and it doesn't mean it's inherently a men's failing either. I don't know. What do you guys think on that one? I'll leave you guys to chat on that one, because I've literally only got through one sentence. But let's carry on. If you don't, they follow up with you and they'll make sure that you're safe because we have learned nobody is going to protect us. Now, I don't understand where the nobody is going to protect us issue comes from. I think that that's just thrown in there for propaganda reasons, if I can be so frank with you on that aspect. But yeah, when I text my friends, they normally text me back. If I text my dad or my parents when I was younger, they would text me back to let me know that they're safe or following up, making sure how long I'm going to be. And my parents are like that. My mum's like that. My dad's like that. My friends are like that. My partner's like that. But I don't understand how that's inherently a women's issue or situation. I think that comes with how much that you want to let somebody know where you are and what would happen to you. I think that, to pun the name of the channel, I do think that comes with a essence of common sense that, right, I'm out late, something could happen to me. I'm going to let people know what's going on. So if I don't text them back in an hour or I'm not home in an hour, they can be worried and they can come look for me and they might save me, so to speak. I think that that's just a common sense thing to do. I don't think that that's inherently a woman's issue, and I don't think that that's inherently a men's issue either. I think that's just a common sense issue. But I will just carry on. So Grace used to live in Clapham, close to where Sarah Everard was last seen. She could have been me, she could have been my friend, she says. She plans to go to a vigil planned on Saturday at Clapham Common, which isn't happening. We'll get into that later on. I do have the stories saved for that, but yeah, the vigil isn't happening. For anybody that is wondering why, most of it is due to COVID restrictions, because as the United Kingdom, and especially in London area, we're kind of still in the lockdown. So not sure how a vigil would have been approved, but carrying on. For me, it's not only a vigil, it's a space for us to come together. This has hurt us as young women. So I think it's important for us to gather to acknowledge how that feels for us, and obviously, as a result, pay tribute to her. Now, I'm going to say this, and I don't want people to go, oh, you're making a false comparison. In London, during the summer, before all of the COVID issues and whatnot, we were talking about knife crime, about how gangs were going around and stabbing people left, right, and centre almost, right? Or even in some cases actually getting to the point of starting to shoot people. So when it comes to a case of it just being a girl's issue where they're taken off of a common and murdered, isn't necessarily inherently just a female thing. Now, I know how that you can use this as an identifying story to say, well, she's a woman and I'm a woman, so it always happens to women. Not to go through statistics, I think you'll find that most people that are murdered are normally men, and normally as well murdered by other men. So I'm not saying that, oh, it's just about men, because it's not. I'm just trying to point out the fact of, I could find out how many murders are committed by men to men and actually go, well, in that case, then I identify with all of these men, and I think every time that the man is murdered, we should have a video about it. This is the point that I'm trying to make, that I think that this is being hijacked and being politicized into turning into a story about, well, this only happens to women. And it doesn't just happen to women. It happens to men as well. That's the reason why we do get scared. That's the reason why we do get beaten up. That's the reason why we do get stabbed. That's the reason why we do get robbed. Because it happens to men as well. Just to say that this type of thing only happens to women, or even implying it, is ridiculous. And I understand how people are scared about this, especially with the actual story being linked or having the suspect as a police officer. So I completely understand where the fears come from for women, that, oh, maybe we don't have people to protect us. Which, again, I think is a very interesting play on words on that aspect. But I will leave that for another time. I'm sure most people can imply or extrapolate what I'm meaning from that point. I find it very interesting. I understand that you want to pay tribute to her. I do, but does that mean that we should pay tribute to everyone that goes missing, or is it just the women that go missing that we find bodies to? Because it happens to men quite often as well. I just find that hijacking of this story is the most interesting part of it. Rather than it being a defining factor about, we need to talk about criminal justice, the idea of how if somebody's having allegations like Cousins was, the police officer, of sexual allegations against him and sexual indecency, so on and so forth, then maybe they should be investigated straight off of the bat. That way we can actually find out what's true, what's not, find out if they do have a propensity towards that issue, and then actually do precursive measures to be able to make sure that this type of stuff doesn't actually happen. As in following, watching, put him in on the register, so on and so forth. But I suppose that comes to a point of actually doing something rather than politicizing your side is worse off than another side. And by the way, that happens with men as well that are actually trying to counteract this, is trying to say that men are just as bad as women in this issue when they feel scared and being treated upon. I don't necessarily think that that's true, but I just want to point out that this is now turned into a story about my side's better than your side, or my side's more oppressed than yours. And it should never have ever have been that issue. Again, I'm just going to quickly check chat, see what's being said. I love it when Lonely Wolf actually speaks. I actually really love it. So I'm just going to put him up there. They contradict their own woke ideology. When they say all men, they're not thinking about trans men, black men, or queer men and their safety. They go full Karen when challenged. In actual fact, that's actually a massively great point, because in that issue, when they say, oh, let's put a curfew on men, which we will get to, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we will get to. When they say, oh, we're going to put a curfew on for men, it comes to a point of them lumping everybody in with the same brush. So if there was a female serial killer that was going around poisoning people and so on and so forth, and I go, right, well, what we need is a curfew for all women because there's a poisoner Jack the Ripper out there, so to speak, or a Jackie the Ripper, so to speak, which, by the way, actually happened in the north, around Leeds, Doncaster area, where they had the Jack the Ripper version up there, or the Yorkshire Ripper. So they actually put, or were saying that they should put curfew for men up there. And as well, they were also saying that women should stay inside and they were too scared to go out. So I understand how the extremes of this go, but Lonely Wolf is actually correct on this one. When they say all men, they're actually letting their own prejudice towards a certain group of men actually take over compared to what they would preach about. Oh, well, not everybody's the same. Not everybody's in this demographic. Not everybody has the propensity to commit these crimes, so to speak, or do these things. But yet, as Lonely Wolf says, it completely contradicts them because they lump everybody in because they're so trying to get against the men, so to speak. They forget about the differences between blacks, whites, Hispanics, trans, gay, queer, so on and so forth. They forget about the nuances in this. It's just ban all men. And I think that kind of leads to the credence of the point I made earlier, which is that it seems to be a publicity story rather than it being a case of let's actually do something about this story. Well, technically, Unity calling. Let me just put this out. Technically, they can't actually legally put a curfew on men. For a start, it's just not something legally that would be enforceable. For instance, who would you have to enforce that? Would you have police officers that are men? Like, would you only have women police officers that are out there at the time after the curfew's been implemented? How would people travel, so on and so forth? It's not something that can really be done. It's more of a reactionary talking point, in my opinion, to be able to get conversations out there. Though I did hear a interesting counterpoint to this from women that was using this as a point, that they weren't actually trying to get a curfew on men. It was trying to be able to draw a comparison between the idea of women always feel that they're already in a curfew because after a certain point or a certain time frame, they can't, or they don't, not they can't, they don't feel comfortable enough to be able to go out jogging or going out shopping or something along those lines. And yeah, okay, I think that comparison is an interesting one, but it doesn't actually really deal with what the problems are. It's kind of a reactionary point that just turns people against your cause, in my opinion. I mean, there's so many arguments against the curfew in itself, as in the fact of once you start going against one demographic, then you have the precedent to be able to go against any demographic for any particular reason. If you have racists in power, for instance, they can go after black people or people of color because they commit more crime. For anybody only listening, I'm using inverted air quotes. And that can be used as a justification to try and put them into a curfew or to target them unjustly, rather than it just being a propensity of, oh yeah, all men need to be on a curfew. It's like, no, not really, because there's more of a case of nuances that go into this. Maybe parks after a certain time should be monitored. Maybe they should be more lit. Maybe the council should take more effort in being able to make sure that the parks are actually safe overnight. Maybe more pathways should be more lit, so on and so forth. Maybe more police officers should have more funding so that they can actually go around and do their jobs. Unfortunately, again, maybe not in this case. Joking aside, I will get back to the story. So it's so close to home. Daisy Edwards lives a 5 minutes walk from the last place Sarah Everard was seen. She moved to the area a few months ago and also plans to go to the vigil on Saturday. Again, not happening. We will get to that at the end if we have time. She saw the missing person posters around the street last week. I'm really shocked at myself, actually, how I didn't initially see the missing posters and take it seriously. I think maybe I've been desensitized to it. I really want to bring up that point. Is that a condemnation on society? Is that a condemnation on the idea of how many people actually go missing? Or is that an actual indictment onto her character and about how she didn't take it seriously, but now she is? Why would she take it seriously now, but not then? I wonder. Yeah? So Daisy says that she's used to thinking precautions if walking somewhere alone, especially at night. If I feel that someone's following me, I turn around and look at their face, or maybe stop to take a call. I've faked phone calls before. Some men are asking on social media what they can do to help women feel safe. Right, before I move on to this aspect, I just want to reiterate a point that I made earlier. That she says that she makes precautions when walking somewhere alone. Most people do. Most people make precautions when walking alone. Only idiots that are walking alone in, let's say, bad areas walk along without actually taking any precautions. I normally put my keys in my knuckle, so for instance, so if anything happens, I'm ready to just let fly, so to speak. Or if I have something on me, I'm ready with it in my hand, or something, or you know, those types of things. I'm ready if I'm walking alone, so to speak. Or 9 times out of 10, if I don't have to, I won't do it. I'll wait until the next day or the next morning. Now, obviously, if you have to do something, then yeah, fair enough. You know, you take precautions. But just taking precautions doesn't mean that it's just a women's thing. It's also a men's thing. It's a societal thing again. And it's interesting to me that she was saying that before she didn't take any notice of it, but now she's making it about her and about what she has to do. Notice how all of the people that are talking about the Sarah Everard story are not talking about how that they can move forward, about how that they can talk about issues that are going forward. It's all about how it makes them feel and what they have to do. I find that very interesting, and that portrayal is always a inward what I have to do, and I think that should change, compared to I think society should do this to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I think that inward analysis, I'll put that loosely, analysis is a very interesting analysis precaution. I think it's very interesting in itself. So let's carry on. Some men are asking on social media what they can do to help make women feel safer, especially when they're walking alone, for instance. Most of the replies center around giving women space on the street if you walk behind them or past them, which I cannot stress enough. That is one of the most sensible things to actually come out of this, is in a place and time when we're supposed to be social distancing, by the way, that, yeah, you give women space, time. You also do the same thing for men as well. Don't just brush up against men because they're men. Actually do what you would say for everybody. After all, equality is supposed to be a thing, right? So if you would do the same thing for women, why wouldn't you do the same thing for men, and vice versa? But some people are also very keen to point out that it's a tiny minority of men who are attackers, using the hashtag not all men. And I think that that's interesting, because most people would know that it is a case of not all men. But the propensity of the internet seems to hyperinflate and hyperfocus particular issues into one singular point, or talking point, or bites out of an issue rather than of the whole issue. So the issue with the argument is that women can't win, says Daisy. They want women to not treat all men as potential attackers, but then we're also asked to keep ourselves safe. Yeah, this is the part where I would normally get really annoyed. But let me just put it in this aspect. Nobody can keep you safe via yourself. You are the only one that is in control of your faculties, your decision making, your aspects. Should you be able to walk down the street with the most revealing dresses in the world, or even nothing in the world, and expect nothing to happen? Of course you should expect that in society. Does that happen because there are horrible people out on the street? Yeah, it does. So because it does happen, don't have the prerequisite of thinking that something that should happen is what is going to happen. If I walk in the middle of a housing estate with a hashtag I'm against Black Lives Matter, so to speak, and that's what I'm putting out there, I'm going to expect that I get beaten the shit out of, and probably rightly so in some instances, right? So why would you expect, if you put yourself in a situation, that you wouldn't have that situation's outcome happen the way that it does? You're the one that's the control and arbiter of your faculties and what you decide, right? Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't give anybody the right to come in and attack you or anything else like that. It really doesn't. And I'm not trying to shift the blame onto you being a victim. I'm really not. I'm trying to point out that it does come to a point that you need to address and analyze the situations in which you put yourself in. Now, that doesn't mean, again, that, oh, you're going out on a drink and on a night out, you should be not being able to get drunk and enjoy yourself. It's more of a case of, no, just make sure you don't walk down any fucking alleyways, because you probably have a chance of being taken. That's not to say that you shouldn't. It's to say maybe keep an eye out. You know what I mean? I suppose that would probably get clipped out of context at some point. It's more to just to say, as an overall arching conclusion, yeah, you are asked to keep yourself safe, because only you can look after you. You're not a child. Does that mean that people should look after you if you're attacked and try and come to your aid if there is a horrible person out there that attacks you? Of course, damn diggity they should do. But that doesn't mean that you're still not in control of putting yourselves in situations. I'm just trying to put it out there. Keeping ourselves safe means that we have to see everyone as a potential attacker. No, it doesn't mean you have to see everybody as a potential attacker. There are stereotypes. There are ways of being able to analyze what's going on, putting yourself into particular issues. If you see a group of people, don't walk near where the group of people is if you don't have to. Cross the road, for instance. Men have to do this as well. This is not just a woman's issue. If it comes to a point as well that you are in a group of people and you see a man that's very, very creepy and they're with you, so on and so forth, keep an eye on him, because he probably wants to do stuff. Keep an eye on him. Tell friends. Make sure that they're keeping an eye on you. Tell the bouncer if you're out and about. If you're feeling worried or anything else like that, take a picture with him and text it to your mum and dad, for instance. Make sure that you're keeping yourself as safe as possible. That doesn't take away any of the guilt that comes with the person that does the attacking. It's trying to say that you need to take preventative measures to keep yourself safe, right? Because if we were to say, okay, not all men, we will treat everyone as innocent until proven guilty. Nobody's saying that you have to treat everybody until proven guilty. I just said, if you have somebody that makes you feel a little bit creeped out, for instance, you've got that bloke that's a bit creepy in a corner that does whatever, then sure, keep an eye on him, stay away from him, right? I don't see how that's controversial. Chat, is that something that's controversial? Do you think I'm being controversial in this instance? I'm super tall to give a lot of distance to all other pedestrians because of my shadow. Yeah, I have something like that because I'm a little bit to that side as well. I'm also a bit wider than the average person, so yeah, I cast a big shadow as well. So I'm with you on that one, Lonely Wolf. I'm with you on that one. They talk about culture of misogyny leading to criminality is misguided. Criminality often results from lacks of socialization, not because of. No, I'm actually completely with you on that one. I think that the criminality in itself actually stems to come from socioeconomic standpoints. I don't think that it's genetically predisposed because of your genetics or because of your inherently being a case of just poor. I think it comes from a social economic standpoint where, yeah, there is a propensity for more poor people to be able to go and steal, for instance. There is a propensity of people that have been abused to go and be an abusers. There are correlations between this all the way through. So it doesn't seem that any of the chat seems to have any condemnation to what I've said beforehand. So I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy at the minute with that. So I think we're doing okay. So let's go back and I will read "You need to back off" for some reason. She can remember a few instances when she has felt scared walking in public on her own. 2 days ago, for example, on a lunchtime walk, I went past a couple of guys and I had my headphones on. I heard them making comments and I heard them saying something like, "Oi, come here." I just ignored it and carried on. And they said it again, "Come over here. Hey, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you." Now, before she carries on, I would actually like to point out that this is one of those nuanced situations where I don't think that men truly understand how scary this can be for a lone woman to be in the predicament of, where you have a group of 2, 3, 4 boys, men that are coming up to you saying, "Oi, come here." And you don't know these people, you don't know them from Adam. You know that they want something off of you. You know that they need or want or have an interest in something that you want. And if you stop, you probably have the likelihood of something happening. And not necessarily something sexual or anything else like that. But this does stem from a form of harassment, especially when it comes to a point of the woman doesn't want to engage and is trying to carry on walking along. Now, this isn't me trying to say, yeah, I don't think that men should ever go up to a woman and talk to them. I think that's fucking ridiculous. Of course, you should do. But if the woman is continually walking away or has headphones in, maybe they're not actually interested. And maybe what you're doing is actually harassing them to try and get them to talk to you. Maybe you should back off a little bit. So I just wanted to put that in. I don't think men actually understand the way that women feel of how intimidatory that actually is when you have 2 or 3 men that are around that are trying to call you into place, trying to stop you from walking on, just so that they can talk to you to get your number or something else off of you. I think that that's wrong. And as she says, this is wrong because if you're trying to get someone's attention and she's not acknowledging you, she's ignoring you, you need to back off. And I'm sorry, but I completely and utterly agree with that one. And I'm sure most reasonable people would actually agree with that. If it comes to a point of you want to talk to a woman because you find her attractive, yeah, go for it. Nobody's saying don't. But if that woman is then trying to continuously walk away and not engage with you, it's probably best for you to disengage from trying to get that woman's attention. Same as you would do if the bloke was trying to walk away. I'm just saying that there are nuances in this that does work and do need more consideration than just a case of, oh, well, women should just get over it. No, they shouldn't. It's a case in this instance, if you're being too forceful, the intimidation levels are very, very high. Just imagine trying to walk through a park and you get 4 or 5 kids that are after you going, "Oh, is that a nice phone? Oh, is that a nice phone? Or what shoes you got?" You kind of understand what their intentions are, right? And you don't have to be a mind reader to understand that. And I think that's the same thing for women when they get into this situation. They may think it wrongly in most applications, but it still doesn't stop them thinking that, right? I think that that's something that I will come back to chat and see if anybody's got any sort of propensities against me on that one or any sort of dissenting opinions. If this happened during the evening with headphones in, would someone say to me, "Oi, you shouldn't have your headphones in," or that I shouldn't have gone down the road? Again, that's something that I have, or what has happened before in this stream could be misconstrued as me actually saying. I'm not trying to say if you want to do your running that you shouldn't have your headphones in, or that you shouldn't go down the road at a particular time. That's why I think there's nuances to every sort of single case and situation. And I think that we need to actually take it as that. And we can't have blanket rules for blanket situations, because there is no such thing as a blanket situation. Not in my opinion, not when it comes to human interaction. Interactions always differ. Even if it is only the minutest of differences, it still always differentiates. And I think we as humans need to understand that. I don't think that we do very often. I agree that there is quite a lot of CCTV, and I think that there should be more CCTV, especially in canal areas, for instance. If you like got a canal and you know that people like to walk down there, you know that there's normally quite a lot of criminality that goes with canals. So I personally think that there should be more cameras, or a camera system that goes down along canals with better lighting as well, so people can't hide in corners and so on and so forth. I think the understanding of preventative measures is a good thing, but I think the idea of actually being able to prevent it with the idea of council and government issues is a good thing, but it should also be a case as well as if something does happen, we should have a way of catching the people that do these things, men or women. I'm going to miss that next point, Unity calling, and I'm just going to go on to the next one. Showing that you fight back does wonders when someone is being a threat. Also, being crazy works well too, because no one fucks with crazy. I agree to a point, but does that mean that when every woman that has somebody that doesn't like them, that they should start acting crazy? I don't know. Isn't there some way of being able to understand the differences and understand that there are people that are different in that aspect? I don't know. I think that that's conversations that people should be having, rather than just blanket statements of all men bad or not all men. And let's turn this instance from Sarah Everard into being a case of we need it for feminism, or we need it to fight for men's rights, or whatever. I think stories like this that get sensationalized are unfortunately tragic events, but are great for being able to have these type of issues actually talked about, rather than it being a case of sensationalizing for one aspect. It should be a case of we should actually be talking about the issues, not going, well, women are this or men are that. It should be a case of how do we stop this from happening? Do we go into the idea of how the police themselves, as in this case for this person, for Mr. Cousins, should it be a case of he should have been suspended? He should have been monitored, for instance, because of him having allegations against him. Should there be more of a propensity to do preventative measures in this instance, rather than it getting to the point of, oh, well, he's had allegations against him before, we didn't think anything was going to happen, oh, crap, he's murdered somebody. I mean, should there not be more of a case of being able to understand what leads up to it, rather than it just being a case of, oh, well, all men are bad or all women are bad? Should it not be more nuanced than that? I don't know. I just, it's just a theory that maybe we should come together a bit more often and actually talk about issues that society has as a whole, rather than hyper focusing on particular issues. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If it comes to a point of like gay movement, for instance, when we had to have gay rights activists and things like that, fair play. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. I'm not trying to say that there shouldn't be groups that do go around trying to produce their ideas and try and make sure that things happen the way that they want. I'm not saying it shouldn't. I'm just saying that when it comes to sensationalized stories like this, there's not many pieces on about what to do to change. It's more of a case of, I feel this, I feel bad, woe is me. And I can understand how the far right and the right in general, or conservatives in general, will go, well, oh, this just seems to be about victimhood and the idea about how you feel and how victimization carries on. But I can also see the other side about, yeah, well, I feel like this when I walk through different parks or different areas at night. I feel the same thing, not to the same degree, but I do feel the same, right? I think that that's kind of important to be able to get through and understand the differences, the nuances between this, rather than it just being a case of men versus women, women versus men. I just think that we're surely better than that now, right? So I want to make something very clear. I'm not saying every man is the problem. I don't think that at all, says Shy. See, even in this story or this editorial, right? You've had one woman that says, well, we have to treat all men as attackers. And the next story after that is, well, I don't think every man's a problem. I mean, that just goes to the point of I'm not looking at this as an objective fact. I'm actually looking at it of how it affects me. I'm internalizing it again and seeing how all of this affects me and how it makes me feel. Now, that's not an invalid statement by itself, but the whole situation shouldn't be about an internalization. It should be about how society as a whole can stay. So she carries on to say, but she says she's already started making precautions for when she can go out more as lockdown restrictions ease, the same as most people do. As I said before, I have preventative measures. So does the partner. So do most people. They have a way of preventative measures. Rape alarms used to be a thing. When you had it on Walkmans and things like that, you pull a string and it makes a massive noise. That's not to say I want them to come back because they're noisy as fuck. But preventative measures have always been something that humans, adult humans, should always do. Saying that you want the world to be a great place where you should be able to walk down a canal in the middle of the night is something that we can all agree. You should be able to. But again, the reality is you probably can't because there's horrible people out there. That doesn't mean that you target the whole demographic of those people. It means that you target the people that are doing it, right? So she lives in Birmingham and says the case of Sarah Everard has resonated across the country. I travel for work, so I go all over the country pretty much. I don't think it's a London issue. I don't think it's a Birmingham issue. I think it's an all over issue. And I completely not agree. It is an all over issue. But I think the sooner we stop internalizing how these types of issues and stories actually make you and I feel, it should be a case of what can we do to actually benefit society and stop this from happening. Because otherwise, all we're going to do is sit around the fire and explain our feelings. And sure, that's a great way of being able to feel better and make ourselves sure that we've been heard. But overall, it does nothing for society. These needs to be debated in the Houses of Commons, in the Houses of Parliament, and move this forward. Even to the actual point of honest discourse on internet would be a great way of being able to start conversations rolling. But again, that comes to a point of now it's so entrenched in women's rights issues are against men's rights issues that we don't actually see that you're fighting for the same things. And rather than going, oh, I want to do this for women, oh, I want to do this for men, maybe we should go, I want to do this for us. Maybe I'm just being too idealistic on that aspect. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will give up a quick vote for people because we've only got around about an hour left. What type of part of this story would you like me to carry out? Would you like me to talk about the idea of the curfew from our lovely lords, or would you like me to go on and talk about the actual police officer himself and the history that comes with the police officer, or what would ask, or the vigils themselves? I think we've got enough time for 2 more stories. So if in the chat you would like to put one for the actual curfew. Okay, so Jensen wants curfew. Who else wants what? I will give a couple of seconds while I have a drink to let you all decide. So curfew, if you want me to talk about the curfew. We then have the idea of the vigils that have been planned, or the police officer as well. So if you want to put in 2 for what you want to put in, as in 1 and 2, as in curfew as Jensen did, and then police officer for second for Miss Murder, then do those 2. Should really have got some music, shouldn't I? So I think what we'll do is then, as the chat it's quite limited with only eight people. I think what we'll do is, I think what we'll do is I'll do the curfew and I will do the police officer. Okay. The vigils for another time. So first of all, we'll get on and talk about the. I gotta find it now because I had everything set up in a way that I wanted to talk about it, but I've noticed that with me, my streams never go the way that I think because I normally bounce all over the place, and that may not necessarily be. Yes, I do need countdown music. Right, share. Ah, that one. I was completely lost in what I'm supposed to be doing. Never mind. So, Green's party's Baroness. So this is in the House of Lords. Baroness. Sorry about that. So Baroness Jones suggests a 6 p.m. curfew for men. Now, before we carry on, I do want to point out that she has come out and said that she was joking. But I just want to put something forward beforehand, right? She's not doing this as an interview. She's not doing this as a singular point or a singular issue. She actually brought this as a matter of fact up for the House of Lords to discuss. She actually brought this to notice by actually expressing it and asking to express it in the House of Lords. So when she says now that, oh, it was just a joke, kind of hard to be able to give a joke in the House of Lords when this is supposed to be the most formal and professional setting that you can have, right? So let's carry on. Very, very quickly, chat. Press 1 in chat if you would like me to play this video for you. Anytime, chat. Anytime. I do know that there's a delay. I mean, you're not wrong, Donna. You're not wrong. Maybe it should be for the police on that aspect. It does seem interesting. I don't know how long you've been in the stream for. Right, you do want me to play the video. I will keep that. That's fine. I do not know how long that you've been in the stream for, Donna. Being able to hear about the different points. The main point of this stream is trying to understand the correlation between both men's issues and women's issues and trying to put them as, rather than it being a case of women fighting against women and men fighting against men. So I just wanted to put that forward because I don't know how long you've been in the stream. I know it's been running for an hour. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that that's the point of the stream. It's not just to try and bash on women. It's not just trying to bash on men. It's more of a case of trying to find the nuances between the two. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that without going forward. So I'm going to try and play this Baroness video about her joking for people that are listening, inverted air commas again, or air quotes, and see how she was joking in the House of Lords when she presented this forward. I will be playing this completely, so... Of course, there would be an advert.
45,000 experts and the most advanced machine intelligence available.
Of course, there would be. Because, you know, I always
into intelligent operations. Excellent. Let there be change.
Nobody wants.
And in the week.
You will have to put up, unfortunately, with any sort of flickering that comes through. My my GPU is playing up a little minute, so if you just want to listen to it without watching it, that's absolutely fine. But unfortunately, there will be flickering on the video because my GPU is playing up a bit.
And in the week that the woman Sarah Everard was abducted and we suppose killed because remains have been found in Kent, I would argue that at the next opportunity for any bill that's appropriate, I might actually put in an amendment to create a curfew for men on the streets after 6 p.m., which I feel would make women a lot safer. And discrimination of all kinds would be lessened. In Kent.
So, as she says herself, right, that it comes to a point of she's put this forward as an actual chance of maybe putting forward an amendment. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that men don't commit most, in fact, probably the majority of crimes, especially violent crimes, because they do. And that's just, unfortunately, a fact that is just true of life. And there are things that we need to do to be able to curb that enthusiasm, air quotes for people that are listening, and being able to understand the differences in that. There's definitely those sort of issues. But I think that it would be a case of just targeting a whole demographic of men as individuals is the wrong way of going about it, because Lonely Wolf made the point earlier on, where if you're going to put a curfew towards men, is it just white men that you're putting a curfew towards? Are you stopping black men for going out? Are you stopping trans women trans men that are going out? In what way are you targeting men when you say men should have a curfew? Because we all have a preconception of what she means by men, and everybody's preconception is going to be different. But she comes and seems to have come out of her way to say that she wants a curfew for men as an entirety, right? So I just think it's interesting that the House of Lords would try and put forward, even if it's a joke, inverted air commas, again, to try and say, well, we should actually put an amendment in to try and stop all men from going out. I think that that's taking a sledgehammer to a issue and denigrating against all people. I use this as an example more than actually thinking that this is true. If you have forms of ghettos in the United States and you had a Trump administration that says, right, what we're going to do is that because that there are higher people of color that live in this area, what we're going to do is that we're going to put a curfew on all peoples of color. You would quite rightly describe that as being a racist policy and completely and utterly being a prejudice towards somebody because of their race. Why would this not be a similarity? I think that that's interesting. Donna, I've actually mentioned that before, where we were talking about the cases up in Leeds and Doncaster, for instance, about Jack the Ripper or the Yorkshire Ripper, where they were actually saying that women should stay at home, for instance. I personally don't think that they should ever do that, but I do think that there are points of responsibility that both men and women should actually have. I think that when you've seen, I think that you've come into the stream thinking that this is a stream that's just going on to bash women or trying to blame women for their actions. I would try and ask you if you would or could go back and watch the stream from the beginning, because coming in halfway through and going through different aspects, I don't think you're necessarily going to get the full context of what I was meaning and what I'm meaning going forward, as I try and like to put forward a structure and I like to build up point by point rather than just doing it as a particular whole. So no, I do agree with you that governments have done issues where they've actually said, oh, women should stay at home and things like that. And saying that you should stay at home is not the same as saying we're going to put a curfew on men and forcing them to stay home. And again, I'm not trying to make this a point of men against women or women against men. I think that if we're going to talk about society and societal problems, rather than taking a sledgehammer to the problem, maybe we need to understand the nuances and understand the differences of why people commit these crimes, try and see the precursors of how this actually happens and stop it from happening, rather than being reactive to what's happened. Try and be proactive and stop what's going to happen. That's what my little stream's about. And yeah, I know I can't do much, but I just wanted to try and put that out there as a point. And I'm just trying to curb your enthusiasm, because I don't think many people are actually here to attack women, and I don't think many people are here to attack men. I do think it's a case of we do need to have conversations. So I do think it's an important distinction. But I want to carry on with, well, actually, no, I think the point's already been made, so to speak. Does anybody actually have any sort of other points that they would want to put onto this? Because I don't think it would be right to be able to put a curfew onto anybody. And by the way, as well, Donna, I do not believe what the government did as a suggestion in the 70s, in the 70s and early 80s with the Yorkshire Ripper is the correct thing to do either. I don't think that they should be saying, oh, women should be doing this, women should be doing that. And I don't think they should be saying men should be doing this and men should be doing that. It's not something that should be completely and utterly gender specific. It's like saying, well, if trans people are more likely to get beaten up at night, trans people should stay at home. I don't believe that either. I don't think anybody believes that, and especially not here. Yeah, well, Wales is completely and unfortunately led by Labour. And I don't actually think that they've got enough votes to actually put that through, because it would still have to go through their Houses of Parliament, well, their version of House of Parliament anyway. So I don't think it will necessarily go through. It may be something that they put forward. I don't think it will go through. But if it does go through, I think that it's a completely and utterly a discriminatory law. Yes, Miss Murder, Wales is a Muppet. I don't know who this Wales is, but they are a Muppet. Yeah, I don't think that anybody's saying that bad things happen and that's just the way it is. I think people are pointing out that bad things are happening at the minute, and until we get rid of it, we, men and women and whoever and however you identify, need to make sure that you protect yourselves first. The same as this, as I've used as an example before. Yes, you should be able to walk down a canal road, or you should be able to walk down the middle of a high street naked as the day that you were born. But because there are people that will take advantage of those areas, and because of what you are wearing or lack of what you are wearing, there are people that will take advantage of that. Does that mean that these people are blameless? No, of course it doesn't. It means that they should be attacked by the full extent of the law. Does that mean that you yourself should take precautions about it and maybe not wear those types of things in certain areas or walk down those certain things late at night? Probably. That doesn't mean that it's a case of, well, it was your fault for doing it, because that's not what we're here for. I'm not here to victim blame anybody. But if I start to walk down a corridor and I see a group of 18 teenagers, for instance, I'm probably going to try and find another way round. Now, if I haven't got any other way round, yeah, sure, I'm going to have to walk through it. But when I walk through it, I am going to be scared as a mother, and I am going to try and make sure that I've got something on me that I can defend myself with, or I've got my phone on, or I'm making a phone call. Because believe it or not, this is not just a women's issue. Men also feel scared in those types of situations as well, which is the point that I was trying to make beforehand, which is rather than it being a man versus women or a women versus man issue, it should be a societal issue. We should come together and see what similarities actually make us the same, rather than trying to differentiate the differences and hyper focus on those differences and attack people as a demographic. No, I completely agree. There are good and there are bad people. I just think that maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like when you come into the stream, you may have thought that I'm attacking women, or I'm attacking positions, or I'm trying to victim blame, and which is one of the reasons why I said that you probably want to go back to the beginning of the stream and watch the stream from the beginning. I know it's a long stream. I do understand that, but context does seem to be missing in this aspect. Yes, bad things do happen, Miss Murder, and I completely utterly agree with you. And there should be a way of being able to assess what is going on in the world and being able to change your actions accordingly. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen or it's your fault that something's happened. It just means try and keep yourself as safe as possible. And this goes for everybody. But again, with the idea of curfew, I personally don't see how law-abiding citizens that will abide by the curfew I don't see how people that are law-abiding citizens that will abide by the curfew will they will be discriminated against. But you have people that even when you have a pandemic, that you also have a idea of people that are already be under a form of a curfew, under a form of let's say a curfew in general, right? Because of social distancing and so on. People already don't do that, right? So how would anybody be able to effectively police the idea of a curfew for men? It's something that just cannot happen. So rather than it being a case of curfewing men, for instance, why not put more money into a policing aspect or community policing aspect to be able to form initiatives to be able to walk down these canal roads, to make sure that people walk across the canals like every commons every hour, to make sure that people are safe and so on and so forth during the hours of 12 and 6, for instance. Do initiatives like that, rather than it being a case of, well, all men should be having this done to them, or all women should make sure that they're in safe areas and not go out and things like that. Why not actually take an initiative on society and that society to actually help and monitor the area, rather than just saying you as a demographic can't do these things. Morning, Ogre. How are you, buddy? It's good to see you again. Yeah, so I'm going to move on. Nobody else has questions about the curfew. I'm going to take a quick drink break and see if nobody else has any questions about the curfew. Sorry, I'm going to move on to the police aspect and what's happened with the police. As I said, I will miss the vigils today, but I would like to point out that the vigils themselves have mostly been stopped because of the idea of COVID and the fact that we are still in lockdown. So I would like to point that out. But yes, I am going to have a quick drink, see if anybody has any questions about that, and yeah. All right, let's have a drink. Any questions on curfew or anything like that? And by the way, Donna, if you wanted to ask any questions as well, in completely or about any topic, by all means, please ask the questions that you would like to ask them, and I will try and endeavour to answer them as best as my ability. I'm not trying to make myself as a guru or anything. I'm just going to give you my opinion. You guys, there's 8 of you that is just watching a overweight white person with a flat cap drinking out of a bottle. Okay, now one of you wised up. All right, so I'm guessing that nobody has any questions about that, so I will move on to police officer and that aspect. Definitely don't want to sign up to anything that's to do with anything to do with the sun. So, as you can see, Wayne Couzens is the name of the police officer to appear in court today to face murder and kidnap charges. So, Wayne Couzens will appear in custody, as we said before, because he is dealing with charges of murder and abduction. So, it is an unusual departure from the normal protocol. The Crown Prosecution Service announced the charges instead of the police. So basically, it's bypassed the police and what they want to do, rather than the police trying to investigate. They're bypassing the whole of it. As much as I dislike the idea for Wayne Couzens in general, I dislike him. It doesn't mean that I don't think that he shouldn't have the right to have a proper jury and the idea of proper representation and the idea of people actually going out to prove he's guilty. I think that this is going to be a case that's going to be rushed, and I don't think that he's going to get a full term or a full sentence. But I could be wrong. I hope I'm not wrong. I want him to rot in prison for as long as possible. I just think rushing this may not be the best of ideas. So the 33-year-old has been walking home from Clapham last week when she vanished, sparking a huge manhunt. So the armed cop, Wayne Cousins, 48, has also been arrested over a separate incident of indecent exposure. The police watchdog is now investigating whether officers responded appropriately to a report linked to Cousins 3 days before Sarah disappeared. This is why I was saying beforehand, I can't see the chat, so I don't know if people are still there, but this is why I said before that I reckon that there should be more point of, should we say, prescriptive ways of being able to deal with this. So rather than it being a reactionary point of, oh, Sarah's now been murdered, oh, let's find out what's gone wrong, the police bureau themselves, so to speak, should have been a case of, okay, there's been allegations of this police officer. We should monitor this police officer because they should be held in a higher account for a goddamn start. So we should monitor this police officer and find out whether or not this is true, make sure that we keep tabs on him, so on and so forth. That doesn't mean like they need to follow him all day and every day. I'm just saying that maybe they should be putting him under investigation. But according to this, they weren't. So cops received 2 reports of an alleged sex offence in a South London McDonald's that took place on Sunday, the 28th of February. The watchdog investigating whether officers responded appropriately to the report, as it meant Cousins was also still working as a gun cop for 3 days and full to allegedly snatch Sarah on March 3rd. Sorry, free to allege. So, yeah, that's why I was saying that he was still working as a gun cop. He wasn't being monitored. He wasn't processed. And I think that this is a process on the police that should be protecting us. You could argue the point of if he was a civilian, right? That maybe, the police didn't need to take it as a full point. But I think we can all agree that the police are supposed to be held in a higher regard, especially somebody who actually has access to guns, is gun trained, and knows how to use them. Maybe it should be a case that if somebody puts forward a sexual allegation against him, maybe the police should actually take that a bit serious, because that person could be a very dangerous person. And even if he's innocent, you would want that innocence to be brought forward as quickly as possible, rather than taking the chance of him being guilty. Because the longer that somebody has an allegation against them, the more longer that people can say that you're not dealing with allegations because you don't want to have that ill repute in your bureau. It is better to fish out the darkness than it is to just leave it there, right? You don't let a tumor keep on growing. You go to doctors and you get it out. Yeah? I think that that's a process that we should do with most of the police bureaus, is to make sure that if there is something, or police officers that are bad, that are horrible, that are criminal, it shouldn't be a case of that reflects badly on the bureau if they do something about it. The bureau should be praised that they did something about it at an early junction, rather than it being a case of retroactively going, well, we didn't know what was going on and we didn't want people to make us look bad, right? Because this is basically a PR stuff. And if only they would have took this a bit more seriously, how things could have changed. I think that really comes down to the crux of any argument that anybody can have, is if we actually take allegations more seriously and investigate them properly, then it comes to a point of you get your innocence or you get your guilty, and things like this can't escalate. So last night, PC Cousins, 48, was rushed to hospital with serious head injuries after being found collapsed in his cell, the Sun has exclusively revealed. I mean, boo-hoo, I feel really sorry for him. Boo-hoo, really bad, sorry. Kinda. He is currently being held at Wandsworth Police Station. Remember, this is at a police station that he actually had this head injury, this fall or whatever. So he's in a singular cell in a police station. I can't think of what could have happened. Again, boo-hoo, feel sorry, bad. Today, detectives probing Sarah's disappearance have been searching their cousin's former family garage in Kent. Police don't believe the elite protection officer had ever met Sarah 33 previously, with her disappearance being treated as a stranger attack. Again, if he was actually being investigated, rather than it being a case of that. I'm doing great. I'm doing great at the minute. The MCB. I'm doing great, to be honest with you. It's interesting. The whole story seems to be interesting, and I just think that if we had more of a precursory preventative measures rather than a re point, I do think that we would be doing better than watching these types of things escalate. I mean, I'm not going to read out what you just said, Miss Murder, because, you know, YouTube and whatnot, but I'm going to not disagree with you. I'm not going to not disagree with you. Let's put it that way. So yeah, that's I'm going to be ending the stream very shortly, or no, I am going to be ending the stream very shortly. I just wanted to say thank you for everybody that's actually come out and actually come to listen to the stream. I appreciate that. It's been a while since I've done one, so for everybody to come out, or as many as you know you have done, I really appreciate it. It makes me feel happy, and I do appreciate it. But I am going to be ending the stream very, very shortly. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and however you may identify. Let's just remember that everybody has an opinion, and it is just as that. It's an opinion, and we need to make sure that we actually listen to people. I know that you're here, brother, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Take care. See you again real soon. Bye-bye for now.